Guys, thank you so much for tuning in.
Using concrete or old thick wood with
As long as you beat that, there's no going wrong. It's the key to success.
That's crazy.
But interesting topic that we can continue.
You have got to see this.
Hello everyone, welcome to the channel of 𝐘𝐄𝐋𝐿. I'm super happy to host Maxime, my colleague, and also became a friend with the time right now.
I'm not sure about that. We'll have to reassess in a couple of months.
Okay, we can cut again then. So welcome to this new episode, this new podcast in 𝐘𝐄𝐋𝐿. So I'm really happy to welcome Max, my colleague and also a friend,
Which we'll reassess in a few months.
Okay, let's see. So today we're going to dedicate this podcast for the people who would like to come or thinking about relocating with a family in Bali. Because Max, you are called like the Bali kid, right?
Yeah.
So you're going to explain what is the concept of the Bali kid, but you've been raised here in Bali.
Yeah.
So maybe you can introduce yourself to start.
Well, I think you've already introduced me, but I'm Max, and I grew up in Bali, so I've been here since I was a baby. I'm feeling very, very, very grateful for it. It was an amazing childhood, and that's about it.
That's it?
That's it.
Okay. Now, so can you explain maybe how was your first ages, the evolution, how was the school, how you felt, the connection, everything you remember from your childhood?
That's a lot of different questions there, but I mean, obviously the schooling in Bali has had a lot of evolution, right? So when I was a kid, there were almost no schools, and it was pretty much a lot of expats that came here actually made schools for their kids. Mm-hmm. So we had a little school in 𝐸𝐶𝐶, which was the first school that I was in, which must have had maybe 20 kids or something like that. And then eventually I was in a French school, which had 100 kids from kindergarten all the way up to high school, which is absolutely nothing. I then went to a school in Denpasar, which was more of a local school, but that had a national section, which is Taman Rama, which was massive compared to that, which had 1,000 people. Then I went to BIS, which is an international school, which is where I graduated. Again, the schooling got better and better, mm-hmm. right? And we had more and more choices. And now the amount of choices that we have of the schools, we've got Green School, there's CCS, there's ProEd, there's 𝐷𝐷𝐷𝐿, which is an incredible school as well. There's BIS. There's just so many different schools to choose from that are all A grade. I mean, a lot of people are concerned about the education that we get here. If you do go to an international school, your education is going to be better than if you're in France, for example, in a public school. A lot of the people that I went to high school with ended up graduating and going to Ivy League schools in the States, or some of the best places in Canada or Australia, really anywhere that they wanted to go.
So the fact that people say, yeah, maybe we're gonna move after a certain age, maybe for high school or anything, you don't think it's I mean, maybe before it was not the best option, but for now, you think that the people can grow and do their whole education here?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's always got to be pros and cons to all
Mm-hmm.
these kind of things, right? There's always got to be some things that we can get here that we can't get anywhere else, and vice versa. Before, I feel that there was a little bit more of, I want to say a little bit more of the pros that most people would think about that would be in Europe versus here. Mm-hmm. But again, that's just their point of view of it, right? I have lots and lots of reasons that I'm so grateful that I grew up here that are valid now and that would have been, that will be valid in 50 years or whatever.
Like what? What do you think about?
I would say the human side, for example, mm-hmm. compared to France.
Yeah.
One of the biggest shocks that I had was when I moved to Paris, right? So after I finished high school here, I went to Paris for 3 years. Mm-hmm. And I was just shocked at how the people were behaving in general. And, you come to Bali and everyone's so friendly and everyone actually cares. Like, I don't know if there's anyone that has any kind of trouble on the street here in Bali, one person falls down on a motorbike. Everybody stops.
Yeah.
All the traffic stops and everybody stops. Everyone tries to help. You're going to have a whole bunch of people who are going to ask you lots of questions and everything. And that's with everything. Well, in Paris, it's kind of like, well, you've got your stuff going on. I've got my stuff going on. It's kind of like if there's a crash in Paris, you might have one person that's going to help. Another few people are going to look and be like, not my problem, and just drive off. So the human side is definitely a thing that is very different in Bali than in a lot of other places around the world, not just France.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what would be the cons then, when you think about?
I mean, there's different cons when I was a kid to now.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that's really stupid, for example, is that you know, as a kid, you want all these things. Not the things that you need, but the things that you want. And as a kid, I had everything that I needed here, but I didn't have everything that I wanted, right? But again, that was back then. I used to love skateboarding, right? There was one skate park on the island, and it wasn't even really a skate park. It was a place in 𝐶𝐈𝐕𝐄, which is where there's Galeria and all that, right? And it was literally a piece of the road that they closed off for, I forgot how many years, for a few years. And they must have used some kind of like triplex wood and a few other really cheap materials. And it was like a kicker and a little rail. And that was the skate park.
That was a skate park.
Right?
And now you have beautiful skate park, right?
Oh, now there's some amazing skate parks. I mean, there's Amplitude, which is a world, well, I want to say world great skate park, but I only know the skate parks from here really, but yeah.
Okay, and obviously there are a lot of other options for kids to get, I don't know, nature, sports. So there are so many options that they can have. Maybe they're not going to have that option in other places of the world. Yeah. You have a lot of passions, right? So you can tell us about those infrastructure also for the kids, for the adolescents that are here, because not only for the kids, but you have plenty of choice, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, obviously, like you said, there's a lot of things that we can do here that we can't do in other places. There's lots and lots of activities in nature. There's going to be the very obvious one, which is going to be surfing, right? We have some of the best waves in the world. And it's not even going to be a good thing just for people that like to surf, but anyone that loves the ocean in general. I actually didn't start surfing until I was 16, right before I was about to graduate high school. But I loved the ocean, and I used to go and swim in the waves and just have the most fun ever doing that. And you can go snorkeling. It's one of the best places in the world to go snorkeling and diving. You can go and hike volcanoes. There's really all sorts of landscapes, not just in Bali, which is very rich in landscapes, but in Indonesia. And this is one thing that a lot of people don't realize. Like I've heard of some people coming to Bali for a few weeks and then saying that, you know, yeah, sure, it was cool, but it wasn't that diverse. You come to Bali and you do the same thing over and over again for a whole week or 2 weeks. I'm like, yo, because you didn't explore enough places. I mean, again, I grew up here. I've been here for over 30 years now. Mm-hmm. And there's still so many things that I haven't done. There's so many places that I haven't been to in Bali, not just in Indonesia,
exactly.
But in Bali.
Yeah. You have
right?
plenty of options, and sometimes people, like they think that Indonesia is Bali, so they're also close to, they don't see everything. And I think it's also nice to see that there is not only Bali. Now let's talk maybe about something a bit on the, how to say, under the record, like traffic pollution.
Work in progress.
Yes, of course, we have to talk about it, because a lot of people are scared of coming because of that. What would you say regarding the evolution? How do you think people living in Western countries, they come here? Of course, we have traffic in other places, but here the roads and everything are not that great. What do you think of the evolution of all of these?
I want to speak about the pollution first,
yeah.
Right? Because pollution is something that has been going on since I was a kid, and it got worse and worse for a while, and now it's getting better. And it all has to do with education, right? I mean, again, we're talking about a country where 50 years ago, 60 years ago, maybe, I'm just saying random amount of years, sorry, but we didn't have all of this plastic wrapping that we have now. It's quite new to a lot of the people here, right? And the education system in general isn't the same as it is in other countries. And I don't think that there's been enough of a priority to educating people on pollution and, you know, just simple things like not burning trash. That if you burn trash, that's going to be bad for the ecosystem, and that is not a way of getting rid of rubbish. Yeah. But that is something that's changing, and we can really see it year by year. I think about 6-7 years ago, during the rainy season, it got to a point where you couldn't walk on any of the beaches anymore because there was so much plastic that was on the beach. It was absolutely disgusting, right? And then we had a lot of initiatives that went on around the island in Indonesia, like Gary and Sam and Sungai Watch, for example, which have been putting over 100 barriers around the island. And that has obviously had not only a physical positive effect on the island, but it's also given a lot of awareness, right? A lot of people are probably driving by these bridges and think, oh, what's that? Oh, that's to stop the rubbish. Oh, we have a rubbish problem. What can we do about it, right? There was that that initiative, I forgot who's the person that did that. He was actually, he's a Balinese guy that did an initiative where you could trade in plastic, right, and get some money.
Okay.
And from what I remember, that was happening it was in Nusa Lembongan and Nusa Penida. And so there's lots and lots of little things like that that are changing, right? The government has actually started some educational programs as well. So pollution is a problem. We're not going to hide that it's a problem, but I really do think that in 10 years, we'll be able to say that it was a problem of the past.
Yeah. It's true that in Indonesia, they find solutions for a lot of problems, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's good. So let's talk about the traffic now. Another subject.
Traffic is a whole other thing. The traffic is one of those things where, I mean, they'll probably solve it, and hopefully, one of the things that I'm hoping is going to happen over the next few years is that tourism is going to spread out a little bit more across the island, right? Mm-hmm. The problem that we have now is that everyone wants to be in the same place. And obviously, if everyone wants to be in the same place, then it's going to be very dense and we're going to have a lot of traffic, all right? Now that we have, for example, Uluwatu that's become a hotspot and Ubud has become a hotspot as well, and people are moving more towards the coast and investing in, let's say, Sese, Nyani, all these places, I'm kind of hoping that everything's going to spread out a little bit more and we're not going to have everywhere be as congested, right? Now, we do also have some government initiatives that are happening, so little by little, things might get better. We had, again, Simpang Sior, which is where they used to have the one skate park, right? So that's actually where there's that big underpass. That underpass is maybe 10 years old. It's very new. In the last 10 years, we also had the Benoa toll highway that has been done. Very recently, we had the new road around Padanan and Brawa that's been done as well to alleviate traffic. So little by little, I do think that we will find some solutions.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
to make
great.
it a little better, at least.
Of course. Well, this is how we want. Do you think that you want to be a dad?
Oh, 100%.
Okay. So do you think you could grow your kids here?
Oh, I will. Yeah. I don't... The question is more, do I think I could raise my kids anywhere? And right now, I think that's a big no. Like, growing up in Bali, you're so in touch with so many different type of cultures. Like, I don't think I know any one of my friends who's racist towards any kind of nationality or kind of person, right?
Because they grow together.
Because we all grow up together, right?
Yeah.
I mean, my friends when I was growing up were from Indonesia, they were from Ireland, they were from the United States, they were from literally everywhere around the world.
So, Max, we also know that in Bali or in Indonesia, sometimes we have nannies to take care of kids. How did you live this experience? Because obviously it must be something to not be all the time with your parents or at school. So how do you feel about that?
I mean, for me, it was amazing. I have 𝐈𝐓'𝐒 and Kiki were two women that took care of me a lot when I was a kid. And when I say a lot, like I would have the choice when I was a kid between having dinner with my parents or having dinner with them, right? And most of the time I was like, I'd rather have a chat with 𝐈𝐓𝐒 and have dinner with her and then go and do my own thing. And for me, I'm very grateful about that because that's what also gave me a little bit more of my, I want to say, Indonesian or Balinese culture, right? And that's something that we don't have as much now, I want to say, but I mean, when I was a kid, I spent so much of my time with 𝐈𝐓𝐒, which is like an auntie for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, positive side for you.
I can't even imagine having any kind of negatives to it.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, if it'd be in France and that my parents would not have had as much time as they wanted for me, which I had great parents, by the way, just an example. But when, if you're in France and that your parents don't have that much time, then the reality is, unless you're super loaded, then you're going to be spending a lot of time alone or just going out and doing bad stuff in the streets, right? That's what's going to happen in a lot of big cities and all that.
Of course.
Here, I didn't really have that. And again, I know that I've touched on just how friendly people are here in general, but that goes towards everything. I remember when I was a kid, everywhere that I would go to, if I would meet some random people in the street, adults, they would all be super friendly and they would all ask, how my day was going and where I live and how come I speak Indonesian and all these things. And I don't think that I ever felt unsafe as a kid walking around in Bali.
Yeah.
And I mean, when I was a kid, I had all the freedom that I needed to. I had my little bicycle when I was like 8, 9 years old, and I would just go in the afternoon or in the morning and sometimes come back at nighttime. And my parents never really had to worry about where I was because a lot of the worries that you would have in a big city like in Paris or London, if your kid would be leaving for, let's say, 12 hours without giving you any news, you don't have those worries here, right? No one's gonna kidnap your kid here. No one's gonna stop your kid and put him at gunpoint or knife point and try to rob him. Well, I don't want to say no one. Stuff happens. I have heard of people getting robbed here on motorcycles, right? But one, I've never heard it happen to kids, ever, right? And two, it is so small in percentage compared to how much that happens in big cities.
Of course. So safety is very important.
Safety is super important.
And here, pretty safe.
Very safe.
Which is, I think, a subject that parents are, of course, very sensitive to that subject, because we hear more and more crazy things in big cities. Bali is quite preserved, so I think it's an important point to raise, because we can also have this scare when we don't know. People are scared, so they can imagine anything. But obviously, also it happens with the culture here, the religion, right? You can maybe talk about those beliefs that Balinese have, so about the karma and.
Well, that's one of the other things, right? It's not just that Balinese people are obviously not violent compared to a lot of other countries, but on top of that, they hate stealing. And it most likely has to do with most of the karma and the religion and all that, but they really, really, really hate stealing. And when I say that they hate stealing, like, if there's a guy that robs a house, he'd be safer going to the police than running into some other Balinese guys. Like, and it has literally happened sometimes that a guy would like rob a house and then he would surrender himself to the police before some other locals would find him, right?
Yeah. So karma, very important. I mean, this is how people say that they have this kindness, this amazing spirit, and that makes Bali beautiful. The question was, if there is one thing that you wouldn't like to have as a kid today.
Well, one thing that I didn't have as a kid that they have now.
Yes.
I mean, there's a lot of things, and this is why when people ask me about the evolution of Bali and how I feel about it, I always say that it's so much bittersweet, right? There was no traffic when I was a kid, which sucked, but there was no skate park, like we said earlier, right? Sports in general, when I was a kid, it was very limited for anything that had to do with, I want to say, organized or team sports, right? I used to love basketball. I used to want to be able to play at a much better level than what I've played at, but we just didn't have the resources. The coaches that we had were not that good. There were no like basketball camps or any of that kind of stuff. That changed very quickly. Even some of like the little brothers of some of my best friends had access to much better coaches and all of that we have. And now the infrastructure for that is so good that there's a Real Madrid football camp, for example, right? When I was a kid, the best thing that we had was a club that you could go to twice a week, and it just wasn't as good as it is now. So again, bittersweet of the evolution of where Bali is going. Candy. When I was a kid, I used to love candies. Obviously, every single kid loves candy, right? Sure. But the candy choice was just so limited. We had Yumi, which was the one brand in Bali. There was Sugus as well. There was Sugus and there was Yumi, right? Yeah. Or Yummy, I guess. But I used to say it in the Indians used to call it Yumi, so I call it Yumi, right? So those were pretty much the only two types of candies that you could get. And I remember every time that I would go to France, or when some of my parents or their friends or whatever would go to France, then I would ask them to load up their bags of as much candy as possible, right? Now you go to any supermarket and you can have so much choice of candies.
And what would be the best advice that you can give to a family coming with small kids, kindergarten? I don't know. What is the thing, that the important point they have to think about? If you had like your best friend coming from France or wherever, what would be the three best advices for them to consider?
Get a health insurance. Mm-hmm. That is something that I cannot say enough. Again, Bali is amazing for so many different reasons, but it's not perfect. Mm-hmm. Nowhere is perfect. Everywhere's got to have some disadvantages. And in Bali, if you get into any kind of problem, sure, the locals are going to help you, but the hospitals are going to cost a lot of money, and they're not going to do anything unless you have either health insurance that has direct billing, or if you have the money in your bank account. And even if you do have a lot of money in your bank account, if you're in a coma, you can access that money. So I cannot stress the importance of always, always, always having a full health insurance when you're in Bali or when you're in any place in the world that doesn't have a proper social security system like in France, you know? I mean, now they do have the 𝐈𝐓'𝐒, which has been a very good initiative, which happened, I think 𝐂𝐿𝐻𝐿 was the one that put that in place. But the 𝐈𝐵PJ, which is kind of like social security, which you can get as an expat as well if you have a 𝐘𝐈𝐊𝐄, by the way. It only costs like 100K a month, right? But someone that doesn't know that might not have gotten it, or someone that's on a tourist visa doesn't have that.
Yeah.
And the amount of GoFund pages that we see from people that are coming to Bali and that clearly have enough money to get a health insurance because they're here and they're splashing all their money at �8 or whatever all those beach clubs they go to are, right? And they get in a crash, no money, GoFund. Everyone has to pay for them when they could have just got a health insurance.
Yeah, okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's your first advice. What
That's
is
going to be my first advice.
Yeah.
Other things that I would say to people, I mean, there's so many things to tell them, but holidays to live.
Holidays or?
Would it be advice for people that are coming here for a
No,
holiday, for people that are going to live?
to live,
Right.
yeah, with kids or.
Don't try to make Bali wherever you came from. And this is one of the biggest problems, and this is an issue that I have, that's a very personal issue that I have with people, right? People will come here and they'll complain like, what are they going to say, for example? I don't know, people will complain, for example, about the different way that bars run here, or the differences, for example, with boundaries, right? Every culture is going to have different boundaries. If you go to India, I was in India for a few months, and I was training in gyms there, and people were literally putting their feet on top of me when I was bench pressing so that they could elevate themselves to do push-ups, right? So you have very different boundaries, whether you're going to be in Bali or whether you're going to be in France or whether you're going to be in India or in Russia or whatever, right? And because people here are very friendly, then a lot of times they're going to be a lot more curious about things in general, right? Which I think is beautiful, but then some cultures and some people find that that's a little bit too overwhelming, right? They're like, why are these people too friendly? Why are these people asking me too many questions? Why are these people
scared sometimes?
Right?
Like,
and
yeah, what are they gonna do to me? Because they're so nice. What's gonna happen next? Yeah.
Exactly. So I would say just enjoy the process, and whenever there's something that isn't the same as in your country, right? Just accept it.
Yeah.
It's not your country, and if you came here, it's that you came here to experience something different. You came here to learn about somewhere different and to learn about the culture of people that are different from how you are and what they like and what their habits are, right? So don't try to bring that here. You can bring a little bit of it here, right? You know, I'm grateful to the Australians for bringing a great coffee culture, because we've always had great coffee beans here. It's one of the best places in the world for coffee, but the way that coffee was made, depending on what your standards are, just wasn't how it is now. You know, you always had a kopi Bali, which I love as well, but I'm not gonna lie, I love going to a place and having a latte that's made like perfectly, and that comes a lot from the Aussie culture. I want to say from Melbourne, right? When we had a lot more people from there that started coming here and making little cafes, that straight away upgraded, and the standard of coffee in Bali just became so much higher.
Okay, great.
Right?
Yeah, of course.
And that's just one thing, but the same thing happened with burgers, right? There were no good burgers on the island. And then at some point, one good burger joint opened, and boom, we've got some of the best burgers in the world.
Yeah, so the second advice is come with an open mind and forget about all the standards that you have. Otherwise, you can be a little bit, like, maybe uncomfortable, but Okay, another advice? The last one, like very last one.
Very, very last one. Remember why you came here.
Yeah.
All right? Remember why you came here and have fun with it. I mean, it correlates a little bit to the second advice, right? But not really. A lot of people, they'll come here, for example, and they'll try to have this same life that they had before, right? If you're going to be in Bali, enjoy Bali.
Yeah, it's to make
Go and see those sunsets.
Of course.
Try out surfing for the first time. Go hike up a volcano. Go to Lombok and see how it is there, because it's amazing as well. Go do a forest trek in Sulawesi or in Sumatra. So actually, it's not just, you know, remember where you came here and enjoy Bali, enjoy Indonesia. I'm gonna take all that back. Third advice is go see all of Indonesia. No, because it's true. That's one thing that
Don't stuck to Bali.
right? I mean, Bali's amazing, and there's so many things that you can do in here.
Yeah.
But there's 20,000 islands in Indonesia, right? So there's just, you could take a plane ride and just go fly like 1 or 2 hours and have a place that is completely different in every way. Culture, food, activities that you have to do, right? It's all going to be so different.
Without leaving the country. That's amazing.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. So great, Max. After all you said you were grateful for being a Bali kid.
Always.
Yeah. So how do you feel now that when you travel, you speak different languages? I'm not going to say that you're going to be feeling better than someone else, but with all the background you had here in Bali, how does it feel when you're leaving Bali or Indonesia?
I mean, I definitely want to touch on the point of languages, right? Especially because I'm French originally, right? Most French people, if you guys watching are not aware, only speak French. And they'll try to speak English, but yeah, it's all right, right? Again, most of my friends that have grown up here will speak minimum 2 languages, if not 3 or 4. I speak Indonesian, English, French fluently. I speak a little bit of Balinese. I speak a little bit of Spanish. I used to speak German as a kid, which kind of comes and goes when I go back and forth. So that's something that isn't only good because it allows me to express myself with different types of people, but it allows me to understand people's cultures differently as well, right? It's almost, in a weird way, I almost feel that when I speak a different language, I've got a different persona, right?
Yeah.
There's going to be Indonesian speaking Max, there's going to be English speaking Max, there's going to be French speaking Max, and all of these Maxes are just a little different from one another, right?
You are almost 10 in your head, right?
Exactly, right? And the French Max is gotta get along more with French people, and
You sure about that?
well, it's hard to get along with just French people. I mean, I have lived in Paris for 3 years after I graduated high school, and that was a shock. But yeah, so I do think that that's definitely a big plus, which isn't just good for your people skills, but it's also good for your brain, by the way. The more you learn languages early on, the more it develops that side of the brain, which helps you to learn all other sorts of things, right? I think that as Bali kids, it's not just Bali kids, it's going to be international kids in general. So we have some friends, for example, where it's a little bit of a similar but different kind of situation. That might have been French or English or whatever, but that grew up in Malaysia, or they grew up in Singapore or any other place, right? And what we end up getting is that a lot of us are kind of like chameleons. You can drop us in pretty much any kind of place and we'll kind of get along with people and we'll find some things to interact about and we'll very, very quickly find some interest in common.
Yeah. With all I've said, now I would like also to ask the question, as someone who lived here, the parents are here, your friends are here, how the people from Bali and maybe Indonesia, but Bali especially because we are here, are seeing the evolution of tourism, of construction, all those people coming more and more every year. What is the thought? What is the real feeling of people living here and seeing all this island growing and evolving?
Again, that's bittersweet. And that's bittersweet for the same reason as what I was saying earlier, in a way that, when I grew up in Oberoi, in Seminyak. Like, if you guys see where La Favela is, literally 200 meters away from La Favela, right? And there was my parents' house, there was my best friend's parents' house, their little office, and all around it was rice fields. We didn't have a lot of land in the house that we had when I was a kid because we didn't need to have a lot of land because it was just rice fields all around.
That was your garden.
That was pretty much our garden, right? So that was a beautiful thing, and obviously there was no traffic and all of that. But then the locals didn't have as many opportunities as they have now, right? I remember when I was a kid, I didn't see a lot of locals in high management positions. I didn't see a lot of locals that were, doing things like working in film, or even the film industry actually was very limited when I was a kid. I used to be all about film and film production and all of that. So that's one of the reasons that I went to Paris for a few years, right? Back then, there was no future here if you wanted to work in film. Well, there was one, but it wasn't present yet, right? If you look at it now, film productions in Indonesia are massive. They're getting better and better every year, right? And that's with everything in Bali at the moment. Not just in Indonesia, but in Bali, right? We're finally starting to have a big middle class. It'd be interesting to know how much of that had to do straight with the tourists and the expats that live here, because it's a wave that's been happening in all of Indonesia and not just in Bali.
Yeah.
But because I've been in Bali my whole life, I can talk about the change that I've seen in Bali. And it is true that the quality of life and the opportunities for a lot of the locals that are here has gotten a lot better. And even for expats living here.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember when I was a kid, we all had it put into our minds that as soon as we finished high school, we're going to have to leave Bali because there were no opportunities here. It was very hard to get employed and to have a thriving career in something that you wanted to do. And that is not the case now. Now you're going to have, I don't want to say as many opportunities here as in a big city, but you got to have lots and lots and lots of different things that you can do.
So it's a good point, and they are also happy to have these people coming from abroad and getting some better lifestyle, let's say.
And it's not just for that, but you have to know that Indonesian people are authentically very curious about other cultures, right? And that's one of the things that most of us love when coming into Indonesia the first time, right? Go to Paris and say that you're from the United States. They're not going to ask you any questions.
They don't really care.
They're just going to see that you don't speak French and they're going to be rude to you, right? You come to Bali and you say that you're from the United States. They're going to ask you, oh, awesome, where from?
Yeah.
You know, and if you say that you're French, you're going to say, oh, how do you say this in French? And how do you do that in French,
right? And they will talk about
right?
the football player.
Exactly, and they'll talk about the football
know.
players and stuff. And that's, for me, is one of the most beautiful things, because I do believe that everything that we have as human beings, right, we have because of how much knowledge we've shared with each other. And the second that we stop being curious is the second that we stop learning and that we stop sharing the knowledge that we have and that we stop growing as humans.
I think it's a great conclusion for this. Thank you so much, Max, for this amazing conclusion. I think a lot of our viewers will have questions, so don't hesitate to drop the questions on the podcast, and we will see you soon on the Yellow Coach. Thank you again, Max.
You're welcome.